The truth about human connection is a mirror that few dare to look into, yet all are reflected by. It is raw, unfiltered, and uncomfortable, for it exposes not only the choices of others, but the patterns that shape ourselves. And today we step into a domain most men avoid: the psychology behind why women often choose the wrong men, the subtle signals hidden in behavior, and the red flags they dismiss until it is too late. This is not a manual for manipulation, nor a blueprint for judgment. It is a map of awareness, a guide for clarity, a framework for understanding the currents of desire, fear, and projection that govern choice. You see, human attraction is not a matter of logic. It is not reasoned. It is a storm of instinct, shadow, and unresolved longing. For every conscious preference, there exists 1,000 unconscious forces, patterns, inherited from upbringing, fears embedded in experience, and archetypes burned into the psyche by culture, media, and the ceaseless hum of expectation. Jung called these archetypes the invisible architects of desire. Nietzsche called them the hidden wills that shape our actions before thought can intervene. And today, you stand at the intersection of both, observing the signals that the world misses, reading the patterns that are invisible to all but the keenest eye. The first red flag is subtle. It is not explosive. It does not announce itself. It whispers. It lingers in the space between words. It exists in the choices that are rationalized away. The woman who disrespects herself, who tolerates compromise without reflection, is often signaling her own insecurities before she signals you. The choice of the wrong man is rarely about him. It is about her shadow, the patterns of fear and longing she has yet to confront. And here lies the paradox. Most men interpret the wrong choice as a reflection of themselves, a failure, a challenge. But the truth is far more nuanced. It is a reflection of the unconscious mind, a mirror of unresolved desire, a projection of what she has yet to reconcile within herself. Observe the patterns carefully. Does she settle for inconsistency? Does she tolerate dishonesty or rationalize selfishness? Does she amplify chaos while seeking comfort? These are signals, not judgments. Every choice that contradicts self-respect is a signal of an inner dissonance. Every lapse of clarity, every embrace of confusion is a footprint of unresolved shadow. And when you recognize this, you move beyond reaction, beyond frustration, beyond the urge to fix what is not yours to fix. You observe, you understand, you perceive. And in perception lies power, the power to remain unshaken, anchored in clarity, even as the currents of chaos swirl around you. The second red flag is desire misaligned with integrity. Desire is a complex current, and when unexamined, it can sweep the strongest minds into decisions that defy reason. The woman who repeatedly chooses men who hurt her, betray her, or dismiss her is not merely unaware of consequence. She is tethered to an unresolved pattern of longing. A longing for validation, for recognition, for excitement that masquerades as connection. It is the dance of shadow and instinct, the interplay of fear and fantasy. And the observant mind sees this not as a judgment, but as a map. Every repetition, every cycle of hurt, every rationalization is a coordinate on the hidden chart of the psyche, revealing not only the choices she makes, but the forces that drive them. Yet the truth cuts deeper than observation alone. To understand these patterns, one must confront the uncomfortable reality. Choice is rarely about logic, morality, or conscious intent. It is about resonance. It is about vibration. It is about the alignment of shadow and archetype, desire and defense, longing and fear. Jung called this the interplay of anima, and shadow the unseen dance that shapes attraction. And to witness it without anger, without judgment, without ego, is to achieve clarity, a clarity that allows you to see not only the choices of others, but the currents within yourself that might attract or repel them. The third red flag emerges in the form of emotional instability masked as intensity. The woman who oscillates between extremes of adoration and disdain, who tests boundaries repeatedly, who thrives on drama while craving connection. This is a signal of unresolved chaos within. Nietzsche would say she has not yet confronted the abyss within herself, and in its absence, she seeks it externally. Huxley would note that cultural pressures and narratives of romance have created a theater where desire and destruction are entangled. And Freud would remind us that unexamined impulses often replay in patterns that repeat across lifetimes. When you witness this behavior, do not respond with anger or judgment. Observe it as a pattern, a signal, a map of a mind still in conflict with itself. And in your observation, you maintain sovereignty. The fourth red flag is a distortion of self-perception. Here lies the woman who projects confidence without self-awareness, who masks insecurity beneath bravado, who embraces charm but evades accountability. She is a living contradiction, a blend of desire and defense, projection and avoidance. She attracts attention yet resists intimacy. She desires connection yet fears surrender. The observant mind sees through this immediately, not to manipulate, not to criticize, but to understand. Every contradiction, every evasion, every misalignment is a coordinate on the map of shadow. And understanding it allows you to navigate interactions with clarity, restraint, and authority. Most men never see these red flags because they are trained to respond, not observe. They are taught to react, not perceive. They are conditioned to seek validation through approval, attraction through conquest, and connection through compromise. But mastery requires something different: attention, perception, and detachment. To spot a red flag is not to condemn, but to understand. To understand is not to engage, but to navigate. And to navigate is not to be swept away, but to remain anchored in clarity. The fifth red flag is the inability to confront personal responsibility. The woman who blames others for her dissatisfaction, who refuses to reflect on patterns she perpetuates, who externalizes conflict rather than exploring her own shadow. This is not merely a behavioral flaw. It is a structural marker of unresolved psyche. Jung called this the refusal of individuation, the process of integrating shadow and consciousness, fear and desire, longing and reality. When choice is divorced from responsibility, the wrong partner is rarely the anomaly, it is the inevitable outcome. And the observant man sees this pattern not as a threat, but as a signal to align himself with clarity, awareness, and sovereignty. And yet, despite every warning, despite every signal etched into behavior, the currents of attraction continue to flow with astonishing force. Human desire is rarely rational. It is rarely obedient. It is a force older than intellect, older than culture, older than language itself. Freud whispered of the unconscious, that hidden kingdom beneath the surface of reason, where instinct and impulse write their own laws. Jung expanded this into the collective psyche, where archetypes, the eternal figures of our stories, myths, and shadows, move unseen, guiding choices with invisible hands. And it is here, in this unseen realm, that the wrong choice is born. It is not born from malice, not from weakness, but from the invisible architecture of mind, the resonance of shadow with shadow, longing with longing, chaos with chaos. To witness this, to truly understand it, is to step into a domain few dare to enter. The observant mind sees the patterns repeating across generations, across cultures, across centuries. The warrior drawn to the siren of chaos, the healer seduced by the architect of conflict, the lover ensnared by the echo of unresolved fear. It is a dance older than humanity, a rhythm coded in the psyche, a song played before birth and remembered long after death. And most men never notice it. They chase desire without understanding. They react to signals without reading them. They attempt connection without perceiving the forces that shape it. The sixth red flag lies in repetition, the endless cycle of attraction to the unavailable, the unfaithful, the unaligned. This is not coincidence, this is pattern. Every repetition is a signal from the unconscious, a coordinate on the map of unresolved shadow. Nietzsche would call it the eternal recurrence of error, the unbroken chain of desire that refuses to learn. Jung would call it the projection of unresolved inner chaos onto the canvas of external relationships. And you, the observer, must learn to see it not as tragedy, but as guidance. Every repetition is a lesson, every pattern a mirror, every failure a signal of currents that must be understood before engagement can ever be conscious, clear, or sovereign. The seventh red flag is the embrace of illusion over reality. Here lies the woman who chooses fantasy over substance, image over integrity, excitement over consistency. Aldous Huxley warned of this centuries ago. Society constructs a theater of desire, a spectacle where the mind mistakes illusion for truth, performance for presence, charm for character. And when this illusion is chosen repeatedly, the wrong partner is inevitable, not because of choice, but because of resonance. The psyche attracts that which mirrors its own unresolved impulses. And the observant mind sees this instantly. It does not judge, it does not condemn, it reads the signals with precision, understanding that desire without clarity is a storm, and chaos disguised as attraction is a storm that will always strike the unprepared. The eighth red flag is fear disguised as intensity. Many women confuse emotional turbulence for passion, volatility for vibrancy, insecurity for depth. This is the shadow of attachment, the ancient neural wiring that equates chaos with intensity, unpredictability with aliveness, fear with desire. Freud spoke of repetition compulsion, the drive to recreate unresolved trauma in the guise of relationship. Jung spoke of projection, the unconscious casting inner conflict onto others. And here lies the clarity for the observant man, to distinguish intensity from stability, chaos from alignment, fear from authentic desire. This distinction is the key that unlocks the hidden map, the compass that allows you to navigate the storm of attraction without being swept away. The ninth red flag lies in communication or the absence of it. Observe not only what is said, but what is withheld. Observe pauses, deflections, omissions, contradictions. Words are only half of human signaling. The rest is shadow, gesture, intention, and avoidance. The woman who repeatedly avoids clarity, who sidesteps accountability, who rationalizes contradictions, is signaling unresolved patterns before they become crises. Machiavelli would remind us that power is often exercised in silence, and that those who cannot speak their own truth will unconsciously manipulate the narrative around them. And the observant mind sees this without reaction, reads it without judgment, and perceives the invisible architecture of choice shaping itself in real time. The 10th red flag is the inability to integrate lessons. Every failed connection, every disappointment, every cycle of misalignment is an opportunity for growth if recognized. But when patterns repeat without awareness, when cycles of pain are reenacted without reflection, the map becomes clear. This is the shadow of unexamined life, the unconscious mind repeating errors in a loop, the psyche seeking resolution it refuses to confront. And the observant man, anchored in clarity and sovereign in mind, does not become a participant in this loop. He becomes the observer, the navigator, the calm center in the chaos of unrecognized patterns. At this point, the lesson crystallizes. The wrong choice is never random. It is never born of chance alone. It is the result of resonance between unresolved shadow, projection, instinct, and fear. It is a mirror of unconscious dynamics, a reflection of archetypal currents, a signal from the depths of mind that has yet to find its own alignment. And to understand this is to step into a rare domain of power, the domain where observation replaces reaction, clarity replaces confusion, perception replaces projection. Here lies the true mastery, to see the currents without being swept away, to understand the patterns without being drawn into them, to witness desire without losing sovereignty, to navigate chaos without succumbing to it. Jung would call this individuation, the integration of shadow, the alignment of perception and consciousness, the realization of the self beyond projection and impulse. Nietzsche would call it the triumph over instinct, the elevation of the will above the blind currents of repetition. Huxley would call it awareness, the piercing of illusion, the recognition of unseen forces that shape reality. And in this mastery, red flags lose their power, chaos loses its dominion, illusion is illuminated, fear is recognized and transcended. Every signal, every pattern, every subtle marker of misalignment is no longer a threat. It is a map, a guide, a coordinate on the terrain of human behavior that allows you to navigate not with reaction, but with sovereignty, clarity, and authority. The final realization comes like dawn breaking over a storm-tossed sea. Attraction is a mirror, choice is a map, desire is a compass. And mastery lies not in control, not in judgment, not in pursuit, but in understanding. The moment you perceive without distortion, observe without anger, and navigate without attachment, you step into a domain few ever see, the domain of clarity, perception, and sovereign presence. Here, the wrong choice is no longer a threat. Here, the patterns of chaos become coordinates on a map. Here, the red flags illuminate rather than alarm. Here, mastery is absolute and sovereignty is unshakable. And in this state, connection is no longer a trap. Attraction is no longer confusion, and desire is no longer chaos. It becomes alignment. It becomes resonance. It becomes clarity, the clarity of a mind that sees through shadow, through illusion, and through repetition, anchored in the calm authority of observation. And as you step further into this domain, you begin to notice something most men never perceive, the intersection of fear and longing. Desire is never purely light. It always carries shadow. Every attraction carries a whisper of what is unresolved, a shadowed imprint of what has been denied, avoided, or unhealed. Jung spoke of the anima, the eternal feminine, within the unconscious, shaping perception, influencing desire, and guiding projection. It is here, in the delicate interplay of conscious thought and unconscious pull, that patterns reveal themselves. She is drawn to him not because he is right, but because he mirrors the unresolved echo of her own psyche. The wrong man is never wrong by chance. He is wrong by resonance. Observe carefully. The woman who seeks intensity over stability, who craves chaos over clarity, who clings to fear disguised as excitement, is signaling her own unfinished symphony of shadow. She does not consciously choose pain. She unconsciously mirrors it. Every argument, every disappointment, every heartbreak she endures is a reflection of an internal structure she has yet to integrate. Nietzsche would call it the eternal recurrence of unlearned lessons. Freud would call it repetition compulsion, the unconscious striving to resolve what remains unresolved. And you, standing outside the storm, are offered clarity. You see the storm without becoming it. You read the map without being lost on it. The 11th red flag is the illusion of self-possession. Here is the woman who appears composed, confident, and untouchable. Yet beneath the surface, fear and uncertainty dictate the currents of her choice. She presents control, yet she is guided by unconscious impulses. She projects independence, yet seeks validation through misaligned connections. The mask she wears is an artifact of shadow management, a careful orchestration of perception designed to conceal internal turbulence. The observant mind recognizes this immediately, not to manipulate or condemn, but to map the inner landscape with precision. The 12th red flag is attachment to narrative over truth. Many women fall prey to the stories they tell themselves, stories of who they are, who they want, and what they deserve. Huxley warned of the illusions crafted by culture and media, the narratives that seduce the mind while blinding the soul. She repeats these stories, sometimes unconsciously, sometimes deliberately, and in doing so, she chooses men who fit the story rather than men who fit reality. Every repetition, every cycle, every disappointment becomes predictable. To the observant man, this is not a warning, it is a map. Every misalignment is a coordinate, every projection a clue, every repetition a lesson in clarity. The 13th red flag is fear of self-confrontation. The woman who cannot look within, who avoids discomfort, who denies the shadows that shape her behavior, will invariably repeat patterns of misalignment. This is not a flaw. It is a structural reality of the human mind. Jung called it the unexamined shadow, the portion of the self hidden from conscious sight, shaping perception and action from beneath the surface. Freud called it unconscious motivation, the silent architect of repeated mistakes. And the observant man, anchored in awareness, sees this not as a challenge, but as guidance. The moment she refuses to integrate lessons, the map becomes clear, and you can navigate with sovereignty rather than reaction. The 14th red flag lies in avoidance of accountability. Here is the woman who deflects blame, rationalizes misbehavior, and externalizes responsibility for her choices. Every failed connection is someone else's fault. Every heartbreak is circumstantial. Every disappointment is projected outward. Machiavelli would call this strategic misdirection. Nietzsche would call it the refusal to confront the abyss within. And you, perceiving the pattern, remain untangled. You do not attempt to correct what is not yours to correct. You do not fight illusions that are internal projections. You observe, map, and navigate, maintaining sovereignty while the currents swirl around you. The 15th red flag is misalignment between words and action. She may speak of values, principles, and desires, yet her behavior betrays another story entirely. Words are the surface, actions are the map. Every contradiction is a coordinate, every rationalization a signal, every failure to integrate intention with behavior, a path toward misalignment. To navigate this landscape requires clarity, precision, and discipline of perception. Reaction is weakness. Observation is mastery. Judgment is bondage. Perception is freedom. And now, as the map begins to reveal itself fully, the larger truth emerges. The wrong choice is rarely wrong in isolation. It is the inevitable product of unconscious alignment with shadow, resonance with unresolved desire, and repetition of patterns unexamined. The woman who chooses poorly is not malicious. She is unresolved. She is not blind. She is navigating currents of unconscious resonance, and the man who observes without reaction, perceives without judgment, and navigates without attachment becomes a master cartographer of human behavior, a sovereign presence in the midst of chaos, a quiet force untouched by the storms of projection and impulse. At this point, the power of awareness crystallizes. You begin to see not only the patterns of others, but the patterns within yourself. Every attachment to chaos, every attraction to intensity, every unexamined impulse becomes visible. And here lies the alchemy of mastery. To perceive the shadows of others without losing your own light. To read the maps of unconscious patterns without being drawn into the labyrinth. To maintain clarity when all around you succumb to the currents of desire and projection. The final revelation is as simple as it is profound. Sovereignty is the antidote to chaos. Observation is the antidote to reaction. Awareness is the antidote to misalignment. Desire, when filtered through clarity, is not destructive. Passion, when anchored in consciousness, is not dangerous. And attraction, when perceived rather than reacted to, becomes not a storm, but a signal, a map, a guide, a coordinate on the terrain of human behavior that allows you to navigate with precision, integrity, and power. You see, mastery is not about control. It is not about judgment. It is not about changing others. It is about understanding, perceiving, and navigating the unseen currents of mind and desire. Jung called this individuation the integration of shadow, the alignment of consciousness and unconscious, the realization of the self as a sovereign presence in a world of projection and illusion. Nietzsche called it triumph, the elevation of will above instinct, clarity above chaos, reason above repetition. Huxley called it awareness, the piercing of illusion, the recognition of patterns invisible to the distracted, the illumination of truth hidden beneath the veneer of desire and projection. And now, standing at the apex of understanding, the final insight emerges. Every red flag, every cycle of misalignment, every pattern of attraction and fear is no longer a threat. It is a map. It is guidance. It is a signal illuminating the terrain of human behavior that others stumble through blindly. And in this state of clarity, of sovereignty, of observation without attachment, mastery is complete. You are no longer reactive. You are no longer ensnared. You are no longer the participant in chaos. You are the observer, the navigator, the calm center around which storms may rage without disturbance. And in this realization, the ultimate freedom is achieved. The freedom to witness desire without being consumed, to understand patterns without being trapped, to navigate attraction without being ensnared. The wrong choice is no longer frightening. It is predictable. Red flags are no longer threatening. They are luminous markers on the map. And you, anchored in consciousness, sovereign in perception, clear in desire, and sovereign in mind, become untouchable by chaos, unaffected by illusion, and unshakable in presence. And now, as the final truths settle into the core of your being, you realize that everything the world tried to teach you about anger, fear, desire, and projection was merely a prelude to this moment. Every heartbreak, every misalignment, every disappointment, all of it was a map leading you to sovereignty. The chaos outside you now serves only as a mirror of mastery within you. You no longer chase validation. You no longer seek approval. You no longer react to projection, because in the theater of human illusion, you are not a player, you are the observer. You are not a pawn, you are the strategist. You are not a victim, you are the axis around which storms revolve without disturbing your center. And with this mastery comes freedom so absolute, so luminous, it feels almost otherworldly. The world may rage, people may betray, illusions may tempt, and shadows may whisper, but none of it can touch you. Not your mind, not your heart, not your presence. You are untouchable. You are sovereign. You are free. You realize now that anger was never necessary, frustration was never required, and being bothered was never inevitable. These were illusions, traps set by projection and chaos, and you have walked through them, not by force, not by struggle, but by awareness, by perception, by presence. And so, as the sun rises over the horizon of your mind, you step forward into life untouched, unshaken, and unbound. The red flags of the world no longer signal danger, they signal clarity. The patterns of desire no longer dictate your peace, they illuminate your path, and the shadows of projection no longer threaten your soul, they teach you sovereignty. From this moment on, nothing and no one can disturb your inner calm. No betrayal can wound you. No projection can ensnare you. No chaos can shake you. You are untouchable, sovereign, free, and fully awake. And as you move through life with this knowledge, the world bends to the gravity of your presence, not through manipulation, not through force, but through clarity, awareness, and mastery. The storm may roar, but you remain the unmoved mountain. The fire may rage, but you remain the unburned Sunday. The illusions may dance, but you remain the still I at the center of it all. And in that stillness, that awareness, that sovereignty, you finally understand true freedom is not the absence of chaos. It is mastery over your mind, mastery over your reaction, mastery over the currents of projection and desire. And now, having claimed that mastery, having aligned yourself with the timeless flow of perception and presence, you are complete. You are untouchable. You are sovereign. You are free. And with that, the world no longer dictates your state, the shadows no longer haunt your mind, and the storms no longer bend your soul. You have become the observer, the master, the unmoved center. And nothing ever again can bother you.